Great. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on what we call ArtSat or Art on Saturdays. This program is a brainchild of Art and Ubuntu Trust. This is our very first session of many sessions that will occur every Saturday at 2 p.m. from today until October. Today we have very special guests who will be participating in the discussion after the screening of the film on Big Voice Jack, or also known as Aaron Lerole. This is the film series is called South African Past and Present. It forms a part of this film, particularly forms part of this series, which was created by filmmaker Abdul Kadir, Bridget Thompson, and the late Dingan Kapa. May he continue to rest in peace. This particular one on Aaron Big Voice Jack, who was a singer and penny whistle player, born in 1940 and passed away in March of 2003. We look into his music, the music that he created, called Kwela music. And the short film basically tells his story of where he started, and he introduces us into the basic understanding of Kwela, also Marabi, Tshaba Tshaba, Mbaqanga. So what we will do round about now is to play the film. Thereafter, we will invite Dr. Sazi Dlamini, who is an accomplished musician himself, and is very active in the advancement of culture and historical studies. And Dr. Sazi is also a composer, performer of ethnomusicologist, well, an ethnomusicologist. Pardon me, I'm super nervous. I'm super nervous today. And we will also hear from Mr. Shepi Mati, who attended high school in Port Elizabeth in the 1960s, 1961 to be exact. And sorry, he was born in 1961. He attended university in Port Elizabeth in 1976. And Mr. Shepi Mati has also worked in community video education, in a university or TVET university called Video Education Trust in Cape Town in the later 80s, and where he documented, or he was pardon me, I'm so sorry. Okay, so let me rather, before doing the proper introduction, let's watch the films, and then we will chat again a little bit later. Dr. Sazi and Mr. Shepi Mati and Mandisa Ngulana, who's also an educationist, will join us later on as discussants and speakers after the film. Keep it locked and hope to see you shortly. Welcome back, everybody. And thank you for tuning in. I know there were some technical glitches, sound delays, and all that sort of jazz, but I'm sure as you know, we get used to the sessions, things will get better. Thank you for tuning in and for watching the screening with us. I think I might have forgotten to introduce myself. How rude. My name is Zipozengosi Daile. I am the curator of the program, and also I will be hosting these sessions with our guests for the next upcoming 9 sessions. So the ArtSat is geared towards classroom learning. And we focus not only on music, but we also focus on literature and visual arts. And we're looking at a lot of artists, or some of the artists whose life and whose stories and whose artistic practice is rooted in indigenous knowledge, and whose work animates the South African culture. Round about now, I would like to give the microphone to our guest speaker, Dr. Sazi Dlamini, who will say a few words, and then I will give it to Mr. Shepi Mati straight after Dr. Sazi. And then we will open up for discussion, starting from Mandisa, which is in the room, and then everybody else that is in the room with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Zippo, and good day, colleagues. I must thank you for inviting me and insisting. I nearly forgot. I'm so so disorganized. I really appreciate you phoning me earlier, Zippo, to have an input. I didn't realize I was top there among the guests. I thought I was just, going to add to some theme that's going. But since you've already done it, there's nothing I can do. I'll try and orient myself to what I think as a guest could be the problematic here, or the task in hand, which is to distill from this culture and practice something to take forward, and also perhaps in skill and in knowledge to animate our, I suppose, most in priority, our young, lacking in orientation in music, and looking to articulate their passion thereof to concrete histories of people, real events around them. So I'll just hone in on the matter and thank all the other guests who have taken their time to log in, to say that there is a big opportunity for penny whistles as to be part of a music curriculum, I would say, from before school right up to, well, all the way. You can, and also, that's really what I would like to put forward, that if that is the aim of the project, that really the sky is the limit. Why? Because also penny whistles, even though they are scarce in South Africa in manufacture, and have gone out of manufacture, they can be made also from bamboo, local bamboo, and the string basses are also, in fact, my own brother still makes string basses, and also the feasibility of the project also has been proven by a project that my good friend, my brother Eugene Skieff, has a few years ago ran in England, engaging school children, making Kwela big bands, primary school children, and really doing good work. And they seem to enjoy the South African Kwela tradition. Also, it's got lots of repertoires, that can be played in their simplest forms and also be arranged for, I suppose, for any kind of rendition up to an orchestra. So I just want to put that I'm very excited and hope the project does get to the stage where the resource that revolves around living people and their culture and the repertoires that can be taken out of that can be practiced and serve that memory to articulate something that's going forward, so that these memories and stories that tie to them are not just, innate or archival, as things are, and they do speak and are also practiced, which I think is the most essential way of archiving, especially among Africans, to keep practice going as a way of remembering. Even now, the tragedy is that when things stop, the practice of things stops. There's no way of, it's a disaster. As I say, practice is a way of remembering. Thank you. I would like to, so don't mind if I have to log out, but I'll be here for a while. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your input.
Most welcome.
And for being with us. Are you logging out or can we still?
No, I won't log out. I'll be here. Just things now and then I have to run out when I hear dogs barking or something like that.
Okay. I was hoping that my other guests are live, but
yeah,
I do not see them anywhere.
I am here.
Oh, you are here. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find your name. Okay.
I was listening to Sazi with a lot of fascination. Yeah. Let me maybe just go to the point here and build on what Sazi had said. One of the things that for me strike me about this video, first of all, to say thank you to all of you for this sterling work that you've done. One of the things for me that struck me was the fact that in terms of the possibilities exist just in terms of documentation and storytelling. That's where I really come in. Storytelling in the sense of there are so many stories of this sort that keep disappearing, by the day. And I know in the last while, we've lost quite a lot of artists and some of whose stories have never really been documented and told. So it's that process. And this specific documentary can become a kind of almost a door handle to local sort of stories that needs to be told, needs to be documented, need to be archived. And here, let me bring in possibilities of you as teachers, art teachers, and so on, working very closely with a sector I'm very passionate about, and I work in community radio, and really working with community radio stations to be able to open those closets of knowledge that exist in these communities that we could tap on and tell. So in terms of documentation and archiving. The other area, which of course Sazi has spoken well on, is also a contribution to knowledge in this area, and especially given the fact that over the last while, the agenda of the moment has again brought to the fore the idea of decoloniality in education and across every other sphere. But this kind of knowledge for me is like a kind of a possibility of using it as art teachers, as people who are working in this field to kind of again contribute a discussion, a conversation around this very important area of decoloniality of education or knowledge. Then again, there's an area, for instance, of the whole exploitation of creatives, of people who are involved in the production of the creative arts. And I think that's an area that needs to be explored, the role of these big companies, whether they were, in the case of Lerole, for instance, it was Troubadour, it was EMI, it was Gallo Music, and what was their role, what has been their role in bringing us to, for instance, a moment of serious levels of exploitation of artists in the country. And the conversation needs to happen about restoration, about reparations and issues such as that. So again, it can provide us with possibilities to open that conversation. The other thing is a periodization. For instance, just the socio-political context, what I thought, a person can even use such simple tools like as pastel, where you look at the political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal context in which these music was emerging and these expressions were emerging. And for instance, I mean, I know in the 1950s, the period he talks about was quite a creative period. There were a lot of possibilities for us in South Africa at a social level, or socio-cultural level, if you want, where, you know, possibilities of another kind of South Africa was being spoken about, explored in the streets, and there was a lot of that possibility, which was, of course, snuffed in 1960-61, you know, with the banning of organization, high levels of repression. The 1950s themselves, you know, how music tend to express the realities on the ground of resistance. For instance, the political context of the defiance campaign beginning in 1952 after the banning of organizations in 1950, of the early banning, Suppression of Communism Act, and then of course followed by the defiance campaign in 1952. All that decade, which is sometimes by historians referred to as the roaring 50s, how musicians then were not only able to express this, and the artists to express this, but also they influenced it. I mean, the moments where Jack talks about, you know, the relationship with Mandela and them as they were canvassing and campaigning in Alexander. I don't want to, I know there are lots of people here who are going to make tremendous contribution, who are well informed about specific aspects of this, but for now, it was just to add to what Sazi had already began, you know, by raising some of those observations. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Shepi. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Zoom. There's a chat button somewhere at the bottom. Some of you have been chatting already. If you are interested in commenting, but I mean, I think we're a small group enough. If there's anyone who wants to contribute to today's topic, I would also like to put someone on the spot. Ben, you also work with, I see you there. Thank you for tuning in. You recently also contributed to an article, I should say, on Big Voice Jack. Could you tell us a little bit about, you know, your discoveries, or how you, because you also work with young people, and you're interested in education, is it possible if you could share a little bit of, what or how you would like to take what you've contributed back into communities with these young people? Anything?
Hi, Zippo. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I mean, it was, I suppose, the sort of reflecting on writing and researching around the film and around Big Jack was a real learning process. You know, he's someone who I'd heard about and had heard some bits of music about, but compared to some other people in the whole series of films that are going to be shown in the coming weeks, he was someone I hadn't heard as much. So it was a real learning process. And yeah, there's a lot in what Shepi's just said that are also kind of points of interest to do with the sort of acceleration of cultural activity that was happening through the 1950s in South and Southern Africa. That's kind of one thing touched upon. Another is this point of exploitation, and I think there's the exploitation of musicians not getting publishing rights, but then also the sort of how to put it, the dubious inclusion in projects such as like Mango Groove, and the way that certain music gets appropriated into a certain form of pop music, and who benefits from that is a kind of question. But in regard to like how to work with these learning resources with younger people, that's still kind of yet to be figured out. And I think it's something to keep kind of thinking about and figuring out where we can have screenings of the film and then in-person discussions, hopefully. I know Bridget has spoken about positive responses about screening this, I think, prior to strict lockdowns. So yeah, I don't really have anything to add other than that. But as Sazi and Shepi said, I'm interested to hear other comments first, and then maybe that will then maybe I'll bounce off those. Is that okay, Zips? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Hannah, also for your commentary. She says such valid and insightful comments by your two speakers and beautiful expressed. I think everyone can see it, actually. I don't need to read. Also, the films are available online for educators. If you would like to gain access into the films, you can go online to Art and Ubuntu Trust.org on our website. And you could also send emails if you'd like to inquire about the other resources and materials that you could get to share or to use in your classroom. You could send inquiry at artandubuntutrust.org. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment or would like to share?
Hi, Zippo.
Mandisa. Thank you, Mandisa.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Maybe I can share what my role has been as an educator at an institution, like a museum, and as on the side with a personal project that I do, and how we have translated films into films or exhibitions into learning resources. Maybe I can speak about what I do as an educator at a museum. We work very closely with the curatorial team where we create ways to translate existing exhibitions into learning materials for students and for teachers. I'll make an example of two different types of responses we have made. It was a William Kendrick exhibition. I didn't get to choose that, but it was one of the biggest exhibitions that we've had. And so what we did was we produced a learning and teaching resource materials, otherwise known as the LTSM, which is aimed at the South Africa's school curriculum. So the purpose of this resource was to produce a visual art exhibition of the children's work that are a direct response to what they have learned about the artist, his varied mediums of expression, and the recurring themes in his work. So we are using this Cambridge resource as a template for our future artist resources. We are currently developing one for Senzeni Makgasela's exhibition. So there is a way, I think, that we can look into films and translate them into resources. Because on my personal project, which is Omnye Makafundise Omnye, we have film screenings, but it's not just film screenings that we don't start with films first. So we have a book club, we have art classes, and there's actually no formula with what I do, like with the Zais. So we have storytelling activities from the books that we read. We build on that by letting them use their imagination in a visual way, which is art making activities, visiting museums or galleries. Then we watch and discuss films relevant to the story. So I think what I do not do with that project is documenting, I do not document what it is, that there are no LTSMs being created there. And I think this is the reason why I wanted the other guy to come and join us today, Ubuhle, that runs film screenings in Ekhayelitsha, because I'm not so knowledgeable about that process, but I do believe there is so much in film, in not just watching films or learning from that. And the possibilities are there. There's access to spaces, to equipment. And I think there's so many stories that, need to be told and archived and documented, as Sazi Dlamini mentioned earlier. And yeah, I think that's my 2 or 3 cents.
Thank you, Mandisa, for joining us and also for your input. No other comments. So just a reminder, these sessions will happen every Saturday. Next week, we have an art session with a ceramicist and potter, Elizabeth Kwela and Mbaqanga, where she demonstrates together with her grandchildren the methods and knowledge involved in the ancient art form of ceramic making. So from collecting clay to cleaning it, to pounding it, preparing it, shaping it, and decorating the pots and firing them. And she also reflects on the system of art exchange and her hopes for her art. So that is next week's session. We also have, very interesting sessions that will come up after next week's session. So we're hoping that you will stay tuned and join us in the next few weeks. Any comments? No comments? No questions for us or for me? Nobody.
If I may say one thing, as my colleagues have prompting here, sorry to butt in, is that perhaps what could be, as far as I can see with your music program, what could be a progression is to have a musicological input, whereby you follow up by, say, pulling out repertoires of these profile artists. So you have a body of repertoires that can then be, put out, and curricularized differently in the different years. But in the case of Kwela, which is for me is very inspiring, also is that of another perhaps practice of biography, whereby the musicians themselves could be or participants in such assemblage or performance could be as an extra activity also work on biographic writing, and also a musicological aspect of repertoires. What do they tie in? What circumstances? Oh, this is, as my brother has been saying, the experiences of these musicians touch on some significant, events, social events, political, economic events, relational that could also at that very age inform not only just the musicianship, which also can develop in its own, but also on practices that integrate people, students to history, to the present, and also to what they can do instrumentally to take the form forward, as well as to just advance the skills of communication, which I think is very important, whether they are written or remembered or practiced. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a comment, if I'm allowed to talk.
Welcome, Lindel.
Not allowed.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, we are on lockdown, so the laptop was close by. Thank you for the fascinating film. I don't work with young people at all. And I think what we saw today would be just as useful to university students who are coming into higher education less and less prepared with the shaker and shaker foundations in terms of the cultures that you were talking about earlier. And just riffing on what my friend Sazi has just said about how these art practices can bring people together as well. I wonder, and people are talking about hosepipe flutes and other homemade kinds of instruments. I wonder to what degree we can also think about looking at this, not tying it necessarily always to the repertoire, but looking at it first and foremost as a flute, as a type of instrument that produces sound in a particular way. Because at the beginning of the film, there was also people talking about, there were visuals and links to paddy pipe music. So for me, there were various kinds of artistic practices that were being spoken about that could be further explored in terms of the video being unpacked. So yes, the biography is Jake's Lerole, excuse me, but what is being given insight to is a broader artistic practice that is based on a particular kind of musicking that can go as far as paddy pipe music, the penny whistle, as we talk about, how other people in South Africa have used the flute, how the recorder was used, for example, particularly in formerly Indian-only schools during apartheid, because it was deemed to be appropriate for the so-called South African Indians' intelligence. So for me, there's a way of yes, propagating knowledge about the genre, propagating knowledge about the musician, but also opening up the musicianship that is being foregrounded today, which is how do we make sounds with these particular kinds of instruments that could actually, I think, yes, show how indigenous knowledge animates South African culture, but at the same time, sort of pay attention to the complexities of South African cultures at large. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Lindelwa.
Well, I could be completely wrong, but it's just that whenever we start to narrow things down, I'm speaking as an historical musicologist, whenever we start to narrow things down, then we also constrict our area of practice. And as Sazi was saying, and as Bridget wanted somebody to build on what Sazi was saying, practice is the thing. Because if we become too precious about one particular genre, one particular style, one particular narrative, then we're also constricting our field of play. And that's how these styles end up dying, as we've seen in music history.
Can I tell a little story?
Yes,
is it okay?
Welcome.
But first of all, to say thank you so much to all the speakers. Your comments are so rich. We showed the film in Polokwane to a very large group of young people and their teachers. And what we tried to target this as something suitable for a 15 to 25-year age group. And Lindelwa, thank you. Yes, we are also aware that we hope it would be useful for people transitioning into university as well. But the weekend before we showed this film in Polokwane, there was a spread in the Sunday Times about all the South African musical forms. And they were amapiano, and they were poem, and they were this, and they were that. Nothing about Marabi, nothing about Mbaqanga, nothing about Kwela or Tshaba Tshaba. And we felt as if we were living in two different musical worlds. And also, although we kind of advertised the event as being from sort of age 15 up, but there were a lot of younger kids who came, and they listened with fascination, and they really, really enjoyed. So it was just a really very strong lesson in the disconnects that are happening in our society. And that's why I was so touched by what Sazi was saying, is that if there isn't a practice, the memory dies. And so it's very exciting to hear different educators talking about different ways in which Jack's story, which is a very rich story, but we know so many of our artists have these wonderfully rich and complex and layered stories that, as Shepi was saying, kind of intersect into history, into society, into politics, and then back into the different musical forms. And after showing this film, I thought, wow, a really creative arts and culture teacher could make a whole term out of it in terms of the different themes that you could pick out of it, the musical aspects, the form of the music, the history, the relationship to current forms, etc., etc., etc. So I'm extremely grateful for all the comments and all the questions, and I hope we're trying to promote it through this series. We're trying to make it as widely available as possible. So if any of you can pass on information to any educators, use it yourself in your own educational processes, we will be more than grateful, because that was the reason for making the film. Thank you, all of you, very much.
All right. There's a comment in the comment section by Ben. I think everyone can see it. Before we wrap up, maybe some, I think it's directed at Sazi and Lerole. And Shepi.
Thank you. Thank you, Zipo. I just wanted to add, thank you, Bridget, as well, for emphasizing the educational kind of appropriateness and adaptability of the film, and which I have no doubt of as a resource. But there's perhaps one thing that we are severely missing here: the adaptability to social practice outside of the formal education institution. This is the stuff that should be, really be anchored in everyday practice where people are, really. And there's no reason why I should wait for institutional, organizational, and enrollment, administration fee kind, as it is, you see, even its implements are so improvisatory. And also it's very close to community experience and practices, procession, weddings, parties, and just hanging out, that perhaps its foremost use, other than this of education, as away from community. It is stuff that should be, first and foremost, be thought of as to be developed within the streets and the communities where it belongs, and to view education really as belonging there before it is brought to classrooms which also pull students away from homes and stuff, and puts them in a room somewhere. I would like us to seriously consider the first and primary staging of such memories to be their own place, where people are. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's a wrap for this weekend. We'll see each other next weekend, those who can join. If not, please write to us, inquiries at Art and Ubuntu Trust.org, or you can write to curator at Art and Ubuntu Trust.org for any comments, or if you'd like to get the program or subscribe on our mailing list. And you will get an update on all the various sessions. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to our Richard, Ben, Sazi. Thanks so much, Shepi, everyone who's here today. Hope to see you soon. And our board members, Ubeda Jaffa, I see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Till next week.
Thank you.
Bye, Mayo. Bye, Mandisa.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.